Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Nice to see you guys again. Look, I was not prepared for my last video or for the reaction to my last video. It got a lot of views for my channel. I know it's nothing compared to the views that other people get, but it did bring me a bunch of new subscribers, so I want to give you guys a quick message. I don't know how YouTube works. I don't know how to be successful on YouTube. I just kind of make videos and talk about whatever it is I want to talk about, usually related to finance and how global geopolitics affects the money that we make here in the United States. There is no plan for this channel. So today we're going to talk about crude oil and kind of what's going on. And I promise you guys, when I restarted this channel last year, that I wasn't going to shy away from some subjects because I used to have like a strict sort of no politics kind of policy on this channel. That's gone away a little bit. I talk a little bit about how politics affects your wallet and all that sort of thing. So let's talk about the Israeli-Iranian conflict right now and what is going on with oil. So in the last week or so, oil has spiked. Brent crude has spiked up about $10 a barrel. There have been wild predictions that oil is going to go up to $110 a barrel. I think that's highly unlikely. What we have right now is we've kind of reached peak demand. If there's a supply crunch, we could see prices rise a little bit. I don't see $110 in our future. This doesn't mean that gas prices are going to come down. Let's remember that gas and oil, those markets are separate. One is global, one is very local, one is dependent on how difficult it is to refine and get refined petroleum products to you. That is what largely determines your price for gasoline. It's not really the price of oil that determines what you're paying in terms of gasoline. The best example of this is California, of course. Our gas prices are always higher for a couple of reasons. Number one, gasoline taxes add about 36 cents per gallon only to every gallon of gas here in California. The rest of that price, which is over, let's say, Arizona or Texas or something like that, the rest of that is because we don't have pipeline infrastructure that delivers finished petroleum products to California, and we only have 2 refineries, and they produce about what our daily demand is for gasoline. That's it, right? They don't really have capacity to produce more than what is about our daily demand. So those prices are separate. Your prices at the gas pump are going to remain elevated, regardless of what oil prices do in the next couple of months. So why are oil prices not going to go through the roof because of what's going on with Iran and Israel right now? Well, for a couple of different reasons. Number one, what's happening right now is not new. I know a lot of what I see online is people saying Iran has a right to defend itself. That's really not an accurate reading of the situation. This is a conflict that's been going on since 1979. Prior to 1979, Israel and Iran were on friendly relations when the Shah of Iran was in charge. Now, of course, lots of problems with the Shah of Iran. Lots of supporters, lots of detractors. The regime changed, a new Islamist government came in, and they immediately began to have an antagonistic relationship, not just with Israel, but with the entire rest of the world, including other Muslim countries. So what's going on right now with the war between Iran and Israel is that Israelis aren't really fighting alone. And everyone thinks, oh, it's the United States stepping in to help the Israelis. That's only part of what's going on. You have Jordanian air defense engaged, helping to shoot down drones flying over their territory. You have Iraqi airspace, which is open for Israelis to operate in. You have Syrian airspace, which is open for Israelis to operate in. They are cooperating with the Israeli government. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. You have Turkish air defense that looks like it may have been activated in defense of their own airspace, but coincidentally they're taking down Iranian drones. You even have Azerbaijani air defense that may have been active in the north, shooting down some Iranian drones as well. So why is this happening? Well, because Iran has historical antagonistic relationships with Turkic people. That has been going on for 1,000 years, since the days really of not just the Ottoman Empire, but probably with the Seljuk Empire, going all the way back to like the 1100s or something, or, the 10th century, something like that. I can't remember exactly when the Seljuks were in charge of Anatolia, but they've been antagonistic towards the Persians ever since that period. Those cultures have radically changed over the years, but that rivalry has never disappeared. You're still looking at this tension between the modern Turkey trying to revive in some way Ottoman influence and Iran as the Persian Empire trying to revive their regional influence as well. So, and a lot of folks don't realize that Iran, you could make an argument that Iran is actually the longest contiguous culture still in existence today on the planet. That argument could be made since that civilization emerged somewhere around 3400 BC or so with the Elamite political entity way back then. Anyway, we're kind of way off topic now, but I do that occasionally. So if you're a new subscriber, just get used to that. I go off on tangents. Deep knowledge of history in this area, but let's talk about their oil industry right now. The Iranian oil industry really isn't all that significant by itself anymore. And they really could be a huge power player in the oil industry. They just aren't anymore. They're not a member of any oil exporting organizations anymore. They've been suffering for 40 years under sanctions against their economy, which means that they can't raise oil output quickly. They can't affect oil markets that much, largely because they're just not producing what they could potentially because they can't maintain their pumping facilities, refineries. They can't get the parts they need and the expertise they need to keep their oil industry really up to modern standards. So the way that they can affect oil prices is by blocking the Straits of Hormuz or by cooperating with the Houthis in order to block the Red Sea and access to the Suez Canal. We're looking at the capabilities of the Houthis being muted, of course, by the American action that went on a couple of months ago. It was hailed by international media as being largely ineffective. At this point, it looks pretty effective right now. Iran calling on all of their proxies to help attack Israel at this point. The Gazans are basically, the Hamas is basically underground at this point, hiding. Hezbollah will probably take a couple of years to recover, as somewhere north of 3,000 of their soldiers probably lost body parts that they're going to need at some point. And the only one of those proxy groups to actually help them out in this case has been the Houthis, and so far they have fired one single missile. Their allies in Syria, which was Assad, he is now living in Moscow. The Alawite power structure that kept him in power is now gone. They've retreated to the coast. So one by one, Iran's proxies and allies, which they were using in a strategy to strangle Israel, have been defeated, largely with air power and largely with incredible intelligence work. So I don't expect this conflict to last all that long, largely because neither country, Israel or Iran, has the logistical capability to keep this war going. Israel cannot occupy Iran. That's just not the case. They don't have the manpower. There's two countries in between them, and the same goes for Iran. They definitely have the manpower, but they would have to roll over Iraq and Jordan or Iraq and Syria to get to Israel, and I think we all know what would happen in that case. Iran was not able to defeat Iraq in an 8-year-long war. I don't think they'd be able to do it today either. The United States at that point would probably step in if there was a land invasion. This whole idea that there was a plan using technicals, using the Toyota Hilux modified, which I love that truck by the way, in order to invade Israel. I'm sure that was actually a plan. Was it the plan? Were they actually engaged in this? I don't think so. I think that the strategy for Iran has been the strategy that all countries have used since the 1950s, which is an attritional war to wear down the economy of Israel and to try and break it from within. I don't think that there was ever this idea of this great sort of confrontation. The other thing that people seem to be missing in this conflict is that Iran may actually already have a nuclear weapon. So we've heard a couple of reports now, and this is not, I'm not saying that there's nuclear weapons going off right now underground or anything. We've heard a couple of reports now where the Israelis have bombed something, and then there was like a 2.5 on the Richter scale earthquake, or there was a 4.8 on the Richter scale earthquake somewhere in far eastern Iran. But back in November, there was an explosion near Tehran, and there was an earthquake. There was one article that popped up by a seismologist that I read that said, hey, wait a minute, this may not have been an earthquake. And he listed all the ways that it was a little bit odd in terms of its seismology. And then that article quickly disappeared, and I can't find it anymore. And I went back to the website and looked at it, and there's a 404 not found. This may be an indication that they already tested a nuclear weapon. We know that they've tested the implosion mechanism used for the 1940s and 50s style, implosion detonation of your basic uranium-235 bomb, right? So it may be the case that they already have one or two nuclear devices. They just aren't miniaturized where they can be put inside of a warhead, and they don't have a way to deliver them. The Israelis and the Americans may be acting on intelligence that we don't know anything about. So, and why would I believe this when we've been wrong about this intelligence before? Largely because the Iranians have told us that nothing will stop them from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Over and over and over, they have stated that this is a non-negotiable. Am I in favor of this action? When you look at everything in historical perspective, I have to say that if I were in the Israeli shoes, that I would probably do this as well. This is a country that for 50 years, where you don't share a border with, there's two countries in between you. You were allies before, if not allies, at least friendly before. And then in 1979, everything changes and they start sponsoring terrorist groups around the world to murder you over and over and over. Beginning in the 1980s, mid-1980s, they start coordinating with Hezbollah. Beginning in the late 1990s, early 2000s, they start coordinating with Hamas. They're in bed with the Assad regime in Syria. Iran essentially had Israel completely surrounded. They were being attacked, thousands of rockets, a year crossing into Israeli territory. They had to do something at some point. Does Iran have anything to do with Palestinians? No, they don't. Does Iran share a border? Are they threatened by Israel? No, they are not threatened by Israel. Did Iran pick this fight with Israel? Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's borne out by the history, by the fact that they were allies before. There was no reason, there's no territorial conflict. The only conflict with them is ideological. But is this going to affect oil prices? No. It's not going to affect oil prices that much, other than the initial panic, because it's not actually going to affect oil output that much. We've already seen the Saudis announce, at least, that they are stepping up production. We haven't really seen evidence of that as of yet. And if the Saudis are going to do it, they're doing it to punish all the other members of OPEC who've been violating their volume agreements and actually producing more oil than they say they're producing and selling it. So we'll see what happens. The other thing that's going on right now is that Iran was a conduit and outlet for Russian oil to reach markets in order to defeat sanctions. Also, something like 80 to 90% of Iran's oil output is bought up by China at this point. So China is now forced to go out onto the open market and pay full price for oil, where before they were getting discounted oil from both Russia and Iran. That may be coming to a close here relatively quickly. So we're going to see how that affects markets. If they're willing to pay more in order to soak up some of that volume that they can't get from Iran and Russia at this point. Anyway, this is a longer video than I originally intended. It went off on some weird tangents. If you're new to my channel, that's what I do, is I go off on weird tangents. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a nice day.